Well, I'm going to say good morning, but it's not really morning.
It's morning.
Is it still morning?
It's 11 o'clock.
It's so dark in this room. Good morning, and welcome to the latest episode of the Wired for Success podcast. Currently on episode 8. Episode. What we're going to do for episode 10, by the way.
Well, can we worry about episode 9?
Yeah, good point, yeah. So I'd like to introduce you to Richard Slater. Richard is, Richard, introduce yourself.
Hi, Richard Slater, as you said. I'm head of community at Bolton Wanderers in the community, which is the football club's official charity.
Nice, okay. And just before kind of getting into it, I just want to say thank you to everyone who tuned in to the previous podcast. Thank you for listening. But I suppose, Richard, in terms of podcasts, is it your first time on a podcast?
Yeah, first time, yeah.
So how are you feeling about it?
Feeling okay. The bright lights are...
Numbing the pain.
Yeah.
Trying to work out which of the 3 cameras to look at, or which of you guys to look at. But no, yeah, feeling okay.
Yeah. So, and obviously, sorry, Paul,
it's okay, Jason.
It's
okay, standard.
We spend so much time together, I forget you exist.
After this, I don't know if that's a compliment or not, Jason. But thank you.
But yeah, so and obviously we're joined by Paul Bate, the technical director of Red Rock, technically a director. So talk to me a little bit about kind of Bolton Wanderers and, I suppose, the club and their achievements and kind of what's really been going on with you guys and how you separate and stuff like that. I was talking a little bit about this off camera earlier about how it kind of works and stuff. So.
I think we got most of the good content 10 minutes ago, didn't we?
Yeah, it's typically always the case, isn't it? But yeah, so a little bit about like the structure and how it kind of works, because I think it's quite confusing to the general person and how the charity is separate from the club and stuff like that.
Yeah, so Bolton's community is completely separate from the football club. It's a registered charity. It's governed by board of trustees. It's not for profit. It's run as you would expect any other sort of well-known charity would be, really. Obviously, the difference being that we are linked, affiliated to the football club. Part of what we try and do is using the brand of the football club. So it's got a huge reach, not just in Bolton, but sort of wider than that as well, really. So that's our way into supporting people across the community, really, is using that familiar brand, a place and a club which people have affiliation to and feel that sort of recognition to, really. Essentially, it's a trusted, well-established brand within the in the community. So, but yeah, each football club across sort of the pyramids will have a charity in varying sizes. I would say we're probably middle size. I think we've got around about 59 employees.
It's your league or just
across through sort of like Premier League through to League 2.
Oh, well, okay.
We're probably mid-size, yeah. So about 59 employees. You have some that are sort of will employ and a couple hundred employees and will work sort of not just in their area, but might work sort of like internationally. And then you might have some smaller charities that might have been established for like 2-3 years that might have sort of 3-4 members of staff, really.
Okay, because you guys have got like a great stadium to make space of as well, haven't you? Like,
yeah.
Lucky, I say lucky in that sense. You've obviously worked hard for it and had it for a long time, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. So again, part of sort of the link with the club and the support they offer us is sort of like office space and use of the facility to actually undertake some of our work. So we've got a wellbeing hub sort of based at the stadium, which is where we operate quite a lot of our sort of provision there. So it's a space for people to come together. We do quite a lot of work from there, but we also do bits on match day as well, sort of engagement and awareness with fans. So we'll do, most recently we did a huge bit around World Mental Health Day. So we had a space there to engage with fans, to deliver key messages around mental health and things like that, really.
Okay.
So how does the affiliation with the club work in terms of, like, do you get support from the players? Do you get support? I know you get support financially. So how do you sort of leverage that?
Yeah, so the financial support.
I I think the players do far more sort of work for charity than is often perceived. Is that
yeah. So the club supports financially in kind in terms of, like I said, providing office space, providing things such as players and utilising their profile to come and support our projects, really. So often they will come out to visit some of our projects, they'll speak to participants, they'll be sort of like obviously acting as role models, quite often sort of the Bolton fans, they're inspiring people to meet. So they might, depending on what the project might be, they might come and talk around sort of how they build their own resilience around sort of mental health, or they might come and talk around what they're...
And again, that I imagine that really resonates with
exactly
kids especially.
So our work it's quite tough to explain, really, but we essentially work with sort of babies through to people in their 90s and all ages and everyone in between, really. So it really is quite broad. But working with young people, joining young people, that's sort of when the players come out there. Yeah, it's really inspiring them. Although you will be surprised how sort of like starstruck also adults are as well by it.
It's funny. I was actually on the website, the Bolton Wanderers in the community website, and I saw when you said from babies all the way through to like people in the 90s. I saw the age bracket section. Like, like I don't know if you've been on the website, Paul. But the amount of work that these guys are doing is like it's insane. Like all the different projects that you've done, like all the different people you've helped and stuff like that. How long has it been around?
So it's been running since 1986. So it's one of the founding sort of club charities, which was launched from the PFA, Professional Football Association, around sort of giving back to the community, essentially. And it's been a registered charity since 2001.
Unless you've got the key to youth, I'm assuming you've not been there since 1986.
No. So it was established before I was born,
So how long have you been there?
I've been there since 2012, so I've probably just over 12 and a half years now been there. So...
What's your role there, Richard, more specifically?
So I'm head of community. So part of that role is to really manage the work that goes on, ensuring that the projects that we do is meeting the need of the town. So
kind of reaching out to the local community, getting an understanding of what the current issues are. A lot
of our work is done in partnership. So we'll work with local organisations that might particularly work within a small part of Bolton, in a particular area of Bolton. We'll also work closely with the local authority, with health services. And it might be identifying a need in terms of saying, right, well, currently we know this is an issue in this area. And if we're a good fit to try and support that community, we'll look to try and devise a piece of work to address that.
Okay, so you're actually partnering almost with other local charities and working in conjunction with them.
I mean, it's quite tough to do things on your own, and it's better in partnership. So whilst we've got a Bolton-wide reach, if we're going to do a particular piece of work in Great Lever, for example, we might work with an organisation that might only work in that neighbourhood and has got a really strong connection to that community, is really well trusted alongside ourselves. And I think from that, partnership work, essentially you get a lot better outcomes. You can reach more people. I think it suits everyone really from that side.
I mean it makes sense in terms of, Bolton's, people don't realise the other bit, it's actually a really big part of Manchester. Well, I'll say Greater Manchester.
Be careful, Jason.
I'm going to say, mind the offence, I am originally from Yorkshire, so my geography is not great. This side of the Pennines, I've been here probably just as long. It's huge, and I never realised that until I actually lived in Bolton for a little bit. So, and I was like, wow, it's actually like a massive area. So there's a lot going on, and you've got all these kind of little pockets and little community pockets, and I suppose you guys, it sounds like you're kind of tying all that together really as well.
So like I said, we work Bolton wide. I think what we're looking at doing, part of what we're trying to do is reduce the inequality within Bolton. So there's parts of the town which are hugely affluent, and there's also parts of the town which are really struggling and will be sort of top 10, 20% most deprived parts of the country really. So we tend to operate most of our work in those areas that need our support. More so than the more affluent areas, just in terms of from that, there's obviously more risk of them having sort of health inequalities, being unemployed, risk of sort of more high levels of antisocial behaviour, crime, that sort of thing. So all of our work is around sort of trying to work those communities to prevent that really.
No, it's you guys, like I said on the website, you do so much. It's probably like, what's kind of like number one goal, I suppose, for the charity? If you could, it's hard to say. 'Cause you do so
It's a
much,
tough question. Yeah. So it is something we're looking at the moment. So we're currently looking at our new strategy going into the next sort of 3-4 years and how we define ourselves, because we've always said it's quite tough to give a one sentence summary of who we are and what we do, because it is so broad. Like I said, at the moment, essentially, it is people that are experiencing disadvantage in some way. We will look to support them.
Yeah.
Our main areas, if I was to put them into sort of like 3 categories, we'll do education mentoring. So that tends to be with young people, primary school, secondary school. It'll be interventions. It might be a young person struggling with their confidence, mental health. There's, for example, there's a huge waiting list on CAMS at the moment, which is like community adolescent mental health services.
Yeah.
So we have some of our staff and mentors will go in and work with those children whilst on a waiting list. Sometimes the waiting list can be over a year. So we'll go and support those young people one-to-one over like a 12-15 week period around their mental health, resilience, talking around sort of coping strategies, things like that. So there's a school and mentoring side of things. We've then got our health and community. So that is reaching out into communities, looking at the health inequalities, whether it's sort of looking at physical health, mental health, in its broadest sense, really. So that you can dive deeper in terms of supporting people on sort of nutrition, diet, exercise. We also will do things around to bring people together and sort of a safe space for people to speak, to talk, be amongst peers, especially for men. That's quite a big piece of work we do.
Yeah.
And then the third bit is around skills and pathways. So that is working with people that might be unemployed, risk of offending or have previously offended, and trying to reduce that reoffending rate. So trying to get them on the right path really in life. Because often people that when they've sort of either offended once or they're on that,
you get into that.
Well,
Once you're on that,
Yeah,
I think once you're in that path, though,
yeah,
it's very difficult to get
exactly.
off.
It's
And it's a
trying to break-
pathway which leads to other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like I said before, a lot of our work is preventative. So ideally, we want to work with young people when they're identified as they might be getting excluded from school. They might be having, they might have some engagement with the police, but they've not actually offended yet. So can we support them on a pathway earlier on before they get to that point where they've actually committed an offence and they're in the system then? And it becomes so much tougher to then sort of get on in life really after
I
that.
think once you're in the system, you're almost.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's like prevention's cheaper than the cure is a saying that exists, isn't it? Like in general. So it's not only you're helping these people, you're also helping reduce, I suppose, the stress on the taxpayer as well in that sense, which is a really strange way of looking at it. I don't know why I just thought about that, but it's not really the important thing. But
you hit the nail on the head. In that sense, so that's part of what our work, especially when you talk around that. And I think, I suppose, one of the prominent things at the moment is NHS and the costs that it has, spiraling costs and things like that. So part of our preventive work is that, and not just ourselves, a lot of organisations doing this, is that if you can address those needs earlier, you will reduce the need later on in life of people accessing things like I said. So if it's weight, for example, the cost of someone having bariatric surgery or needing all that sort of thing is so much higher than an earlier intervention, prevention around sort of, is it small tips on how you can lead a slightly healthier lifestyle when they're younger and educate them. But prevention's tough to prove, because how do you prove something that it's not?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, but it's common sense, isn't it? Really, I suppose. But I suppose if it's hard to prove, then it's hard to disprove as well, I suppose.
Yeah.
I mean, depends on how you look at it. I mean, I'm obviously an optimist today. So you've been there 12 years, you said.
Yeah.
So what got you into it, and like what's kind of keeping you there? Because you obviously really enjoy it.
No, it's a brilliant place to work. So I'm originally from London, as you can probably tell from the accent.
Okay.
I might have lost.
I mean, this isn't a Bolton accent.
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Whereabouts in London, Richard?
A place called Bromley, which is sort of like south of
Bromley.
London.
Oh yeah, I know Bromley.
Do you?
Yeah, you
That's it.
Do you?
you used to do a little bit of work down there.
Oh right, so, yeah. So I was at university in Liverpool, and then stayed up here since then. Got a job at Bolton. Quite a unique project, really. It's actually going into it was delivering sort of like street cricket work in a lot of it is around sort of like in faith centres, so in mosques, within
Okay.
churches, temples, things like that, and bringing those communities together through sort of sport. Obviously, football's massive in Bolton, but so is cricket as well. So it was a sort of a way into something that appeals to all the communities, really. So we would do that and then bring people from sort of like the mosques, churches, temples all together, and sort of bit of that community integration, really.
Oh,
so that was my first role for the first year when I was there, anyway. Yeah. So bit of a unique way in.
Then have you just kind of progressed?
I think essentially just progressed. Like I said, over the last 12 years, it's sort of probably had 5 or 6 roles. Tough to actually think back to all of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of that, it's been sort of quite a bit of work around community cohesion, work with disabled community, and also around sort of health and wellbeing. And then most recently, the last sort of 2 years, being head of community.
Okay. Is there any project that sort of stands out over them 12 years? You could maybe give us a bit of an insight into something more specific.
Yeah, I was asked this most recently of what's our...
Well, you should have the answer.
What's my favourite piece of work I've been involved in? And it's not necessarily in terms of like our biggest or most funded or longest time, but we do a sport in memory session, which is once a month. So that is for older people that might be either isolated, lonely, or might have early stages of dementia.
Okay.
And it's at the stadium once a month. I said, and people come in, it's a free session. They come in now, and essentially from there, we'll come and reminisce about Bolton Wanderers, football, sport, whatever it might be. And a lot of these people, especially those with early stage dementia, they might not be able to remember and talk around what they've done in the last week, 2 weeks, whatever. If like they'll recall 1958 Cup final when Bolton won it, and they'll talk you through where they were at Wembley on that time, and they'll bring in, everyone will ask people to bring in memorabilia. We often have sort of guest speakers, so previous players that might have played in the 50s, 60s, 70s to come in and talk around their experiences as well, really. So that in itself, like I said, it's only a session once a month, but in terms of what you can see it brings to those people that come to that session, it's really sort of like, I suppose, heartwarming. In a way. You get that immediate
rewarding.
That rewarding feeling of knowing that people truly are benefit from it, and really appreciative of what's going on.
I can imagine being a younger bloke as well, like being there inside that kind of environment, it can be quite heartwarming in the sense that you feel like, you know, you're around all this knowledge and these people that have lived, right? Obviously it's that kind of thing, and it's just like that in itself, kind of even just talking about it kind of gives you that goosebumpy feeling, doesn't it?
So we had ex-players come in. So Tommy Banks, who passed away recently, actually played for Bolton in the 50s, 60s, but he also played for England. And he brought in a like a bag for life. I wondered what was in there. I picked him up, and he's pass these round. It was his England caps from 1958 World Cup. It's like England versus USSR. And I was like, these should be in a boxed in a frame somewhere. Something. He's like, he was just basically just throwing them out people to have a look at and put on. And but that sort of thing is brilliant in terms of like how often would you, when you ever get the opportunity to sort of see a proper England cap and things like that, really. So it's those sort of bits that are sort of really, really powerful, I suppose.
No, I mean, I can imagine. I think it's a different time as well, wasn't it? Like then, like I feel like let's fast forward 50 years from now. Are we going to have some of our England legends and stuff like that from these days kind of doing that kind of thing? Like probably not, because I feel like it would all end up in a trophy case somewhere and stuff like that, because it's just a bit of a different generation of people, isn't it? And I think it's like, proper salt the earth, like grit kind of like human beings. Not that I'm saying that anyone the modern day isn't. I've just obviously appreciation for the older generation. So we've kind of got into a little bit of kind of about, the foundations of the club and kind of what you've been doing and kind of what makes you guys like stand out. So question that I've got here that has been kindly provided by Manny, who I've not actually mentioned during the podcast. Everyone's probably wondering where he is. So it just lets someone else take over for once, which is nice. But what are some of the common misconceptions kind of within, the Bolton Wanderers in the community and the charity and stuff like that? And
so I suppose the most common one is that that we're part of the club, we're not a charity, and that's probably it. And I think within it, from our side, there's always a piece around awareness of who we are and what we do. We're getting better at that. I think people are becoming more aware of it. The club are really supportive of promoting our work and what we're doing as well. But essentially, I think that's probably the main misconception, is that
I feel like you've lost a bit of your identity as a charity because of the club, although it's obvious.
No, I think it's commonplace across all the football club charities, is that I think people immediately, so obviously our staff have got the kit on, we're based at the stadium, we work very closely with the club. People just affiliate you as working with the club. So when you're from a charity point of view, obviously, when we're doing bits around fundraising to support some of our work, things like that, it's not as easy for ourselves to get.
I think I'm guilty of that. Is kind of growing up watching Man City, is they always had the charity arm, but I was just under the impression, it's just part of Man City or it's just part of Bolton. But it's not, it's a completely independent, and kind of where the fundraising then comes in, because again, you've got that association, they're just funded by Bolton. I'm sure they do absolutely fine for fundraising, but I think it's probably the opposite.
Yeah, in terms of ourselves, so part of our funding comes through the Premier League charitable funds and the EFL and the community. So both of the leagues have got their own charitable arm, and they will support us within funding some of their sort of national programmes. But the majority of our funding has to come through the same as it would do for any other charity.
Self-generated
grant funding, and sort of local businesses and supporters, really.
Which again, if you think to the likes of Willowood, and again, it's a big hospice we work with, but they're only funded 25%, I think it is, from local government.
Yeah,
the majority's got to be made up, and that's you're talking 5-6 million a year.
Yeah,
it's massive.
It's quite I think it's a bit of a national problem, that, in terms of the hospices and everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think just in general, funding's hard, right? It's hard. It's trying to get people to donate, trying to get people to get involved. I mean, but particularly, I think understanding that there's so many charities bidding for this government money, like I wouldn't want to be the person that made that choice as a government official, and I can imagine it's really hard to go through all these tenders and stuff.
So a lot of our funding comes from probably more local or regional funding. There are national funders that we'll get, such as like lottery and things like that, but a lot of it is sort of like local funding, or it might be Greater Manchester funding that we'll get as well, really. But yeah, one of the challenges recently, and I think this will be the same for all charities, is obviously when you're doing fundraising events and things like that, and we're getting people that might be taking part in a 10K run or a marathon, or might be doing whatever it might be, some form of challenges, the pressure of them asking people for donations. Obviously, last sort of 3-4 years, people are struggling with a bit more or a bit less disposable income, should I say. So we've definitely felt that, is that people are, not that they're unwilling to, but I think it's people are just struggling more in terms of, and we've seen that sort of draw back a little bit in terms of what individuals can raise, which is completely understandable, really.
What about corporate sponsorships? What's that been like for you, and how's that kind of impacted things? And
so it's something quite new to us. We've probably done that for the last sort of 3 or 4 years or so. Locally, there's a lot of local businesses that are very supportive of us, whether it's sort of like through in-kind support or cash donations. So from that sense, we're quite fortunate. I think, again, this is the benefit of the football club and being committed to it. So a lot of local businesses support the football club. They will also want to find out more about what we do and how they can support the club's charity as well. So from that sense, we're fortunate. People have already got that affiliation to us through the club.
No, I mean, I think that's because from my side, like looking at it, like, again, it's a misconception that you said before. It's just like, I'd look at it and go, oh, they're a football club, they're part of the football club. They've probably got loads of money. They don't really need that much help with funding compared. Whereas really, that's not the case, is it?
Yeah. No, and the club are really good in terms of giving us a platform to talk about our work. So, for example, when they have their business club, we often have a spot on to speak about the work we're doing and engage with local businesses and everything like that. So that's really where the club are supportive in terms of elevating who we are and what we do and how to get involved and how to support us, really.